the scouts saw me in the right day. Forest was the right club, the trial. They sent me over on trial and I was like, bring it on, just give me that trial.
It's unbelievable that, isn't it? Because when you think of the system now, the academy system, you're all, you know, even sort of your kids, you feel like you have to be in this academy system. You've got to get this training. You've got to get this sort of foundation to then become a player. And you're going to be one of the best midfield players that, you know, the world's seen. And you've got none of that sort of...
But that journey wouldn't... I don't think that... If I'd gone over to England at 14 or 15, like one or two of my buddies went over to clubs and they were like the YTS at 16, I don't think that would have suited me. I think I would have been... I don't think I would have survived coming to England at 16. I think that the journey I had, playing League of Ireland for a year, was perfect for me. And coming over to England at 18, 19 and going to Forest, I go back to that little bit of luck, going to the right club, even getting the trial. But when I went over on the trial, I was there for the first week and they had me training with Forest youth team. So remember, but I was going to go over there as a pro. So I had the week with them and I went back and they went, oh, there was a confusion. You were in the wrong group. You shouldn't have been with the youth team. I was like, well, no, this seemed a bit strange. And all I did was training during the week. I had no game. They said, we'd like you to come back and train with kind of the reserves and maybe have a game. And I went, yeah, perfect. And
was there anyone there who went on to do well at Forest?
With the Forest, well, in terms of the young players that I trained with, I can't remember who would have been in the group at that time. But then I went back for the trial, and in the week I was kind of home back in Ireland. They said, Spurs came in for me. Spurs, would you come and trial? And Spurs was my team. But I said, no, listen, I promised Forest I'd go back for the second week. And when I went back to Forest, there was a trial. They said, we've got a game for you. Because I don't think I would have impressed anyone in training. You wouldn't watch me in training going, oh, he's good, you need to see me in 11v11 on a big pitch. Yeah. And Forest said, we've a game at the City Ground. And I knew Forest was a big pitch. You've 11v11. I went, perfect. I just knew they'd sign me. I honestly, after the game, they took me off after about 75 minutes and I went into the dressing room and a couple of kind of the coaches came in, Alan Hill and these people, and they went, oh, we'd like to sign you. And I remember thinking to myself, I knew you would. No, I did, but not in a cocky way. I just went, yeah. But of course, I still had to go back to Ireland. They had to do a transfer.
What was it like when you went back to Ireland?
Oh, it was great.
Was everybody?
Oh, yeah, of course. And I think Forest was the right fit for me. The lads I lived with, obviously going with Brian Clough, and I signed in May. But even you're on about how innocent it all was. So I signed at May come the end of the season, and I went to watch the first team play, and they sat me on the side of the dugout, and I had a kind of a blazer on. I just watched it like where the ball boys are watching the match. And they put me in these digs. The next morning I came into the to the City Ground where you used to train. You get changed for training and go down the train. So I came in, the girl said, what are you doing? I said, well, I just signed yesterday. I'm just over from Ireland. The woman said, oh, the season's over. So I said, what do I do? And she went, you go home. I went, oh, can you book me a flight? She went, yeah, we book you a flight. You've got a couple of flights in your contract. And I said, when do I come back? She went, we'll be in touch. And I remember kind of as we were walking out, I went, do I still get paid? Like, and she went, oh, you still get paid. Oh, brilliant.
I remember that.
I've been over for 2 or 3 months. Honestly.
I remember at Palace. I remember when Henry Houghton and them would tease me about, okay, you don't get paid in the summer. Yeah. Oh, shit, well, I'll go back to work or something. They tease you about not getting paid.
But even when I went back, obviously the contract, I remember it was a 3-year deal. It was £250 a week, and I went back to Ireland. People were saying, well, so what kind of deal did you have? £250 a week. And you were like, sterling. That's like sterling, like double the Irish pound at that time. That was like a billionaire at the time, you know what I mean? So the whole family were buzzing, and I couldn't believe my luck. That was the opportunity. But I signed a 3-year deal, and I also knew then my mindset was, do not be coming back. A lot of kids from Ireland go to England. They're back after 1 or 2 years. That's not going to be me.
So where did the Roy Keane kind of like focus and determine it? Where was that?
I just realised that. I look at my background, at my family environment. All my family were sporting people. My 3 brothers played football at a good level. My dad. I had good DNA. Yeah. I had good DNA. So when I went to Forest again, I spent years back in Ireland as a kid looking out the window at school. One of these people going, just get me to England, just. Love the game. I'd be watching any football, Dutch football, Italian football. I liked me NFL. I liked all different sports. I played hurling, football. Where I lived in the estate I lived in, I opened the door. There was a game going on. Somebody. I was in competition from 8, 9 years of age. So that was when I went to Forest, and all of a sudden you're getting paid to be a full-time player. It was like I died and gone to heaven. I couldn't believe my luck at 18, 19 years of age. And talk about picking the club for me. Forest was perfect. The City was the right size for me. Brian Clough, they put me in digs, the right digs near the near the stadium. I met some good lads who I'm big friends with now. I couldn't have picked it was the perfect environment for me.
Well, you mentioned DNA, and that you've got zero tolerance when it comes to standards around discipline late. You've zero. You are one of the highest.
But only as I got older, Gary.
But I'm saying, as a youngster, you said you turned up, you were always on time, you worked hard.
Yeah.
Where did that? Because usually that comes from, my dad. Sometimes you'd have a little bit of fear, wouldn't you, of your dad in terms of like if you did something wrong, or if you didn't play well, or if you were late. Where did that fear come from you when you were younger? That
I'm not
discipline.
sure, really.
Was it your mum or your dad? Or?
Yeah, obviously.
The brothers?
Yeah, I like to think my family had good habits with that, but it wouldn't have been. I think
you don't remember anything like a discipline?
Not really. No,
incident?
not really. Not my family kind of being. I just thought if you're training, I just had it. You should be on time for training and be on time for the matches.
Yeah.
I just had that. I think that was just a natural thought process. Not that I was never not late for training. I had my moments, of course. When I was out of forest, you know, about discipline. Listen, I was a young player. I was out enjoying myself. I'd done daft stuff. I'd done daft stuff when I first went to United. Would it be out drinking or whatever? So I don't think for 1 minute I was just perfect pro. But I had certain principles. I thought, listen, if I can, try and be on time for training and train properly, like you're supposed to have, I suppose. But no big discipline stuff from my.
How was it with your brothers when you were growing up in terms of that environment?
It was good because I was in competition. I had 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother. So again, when we were out playing football or if I was playing at school, every day of the week I was playing football. I was getting touches of the ball, whether it be at school, where I lived, playing against lads who were older than me, obviously 2 older brothers, you'd be playing against, you constantly in competition. And when I played football back in the day when you played out in the street, you'd be playing lads who were 16, 17, I'd be 10 or 11. And they'd be hitting you and you were, and I got good habits. Rockmore, the team I went to, was really important. They had really good players and they had a couple of good managers and they would speak about me in the midfield and getting stuck in, all these type of habits I picked up. So I was surrounded by really good people, really good people. I was, again, unbelievably lucky.
What was your first interaction with Brian Clough like? What was it like? You say you're messing around a bit.
Well, I didn't really see Brian Clough because pre-season I was obviously with the younger players and the first-year pros and the reserves. So
what about when you got towards the first team?
My first involvement with Brian Clough was probably the real proper chat I had with him would have been when I made my debut.
Right.
Pre-season I was away with the reserves. I never, but again I was lucky when I was at Forest and because I was again I was full-time training, so I was feeling great. I thought, Jesus, again amazing. And I played a couple of friendly matches, and as you do pre-season with the reserves, and I scored a few headers. And it was only years later on, I speak to Martin and he said, apparently Brian Clough would love players who could head the ball, love players who can head it. And I scored, I think, a couple in a reserve match, like a friendly match in front of him. And so I must have been winning them over, the fact I was getting forward, and like my Forest career, getting on the end of things. And they were, obviously, I was, like you do when you're a manager, you're watching players, you're looking, what's he got? And then the first game of the season, Forest on the Saturday, Forest played at home to QPR. I think they drew with them. And the reserve teams were playing Monday night. And then Forest, the first team, were read to Liverpool on the Tuesday. And Liverpool were obviously really strong at the time. And I was used to put the team up on the Monday for the reserves. And I was sub for the reserves on the Monday night. And I was delighted. I thought, reserve, sub for the reserve. Brilliant. I'm progress already. I've only just come over. I get on for about 10 minutes in the reserve match, and apparently some of the staff, Brian Clough, they'd already left with 10 minutes to go, so I played 10 minutes of reserves. I was delighted. I've always said we went for a few pints after the game, with the reserves. And I came in on the Tuesday morning, so I played 10 minutes for the reserves, delighted with myself, I've made a bit of progress already. And I was told, you're going up to Liverpool tonight. The team already gone up, you're following them up with Ron Fenton and Brian Clough. We picked Brian Clough up on the way Derby to Liverpool.
In the car?
Yeah, me, Phil Starbuck and Ron Fenton was the assistant manager. We picked Brian Clough at his house. We go in, I remember sitting in his house and he comes down, he says, I remember he gave me a pint of milk. But I thought I'm going up.
Pint of milk.
I thought I'm going up for the experience being with the first team and I helped the kit man. We see lots of clubs do that with young players. And he came in, I remember he gave me a pint of milk and I went, I said, I don't like milk. He says, you better drink that. He says, I'm putting the bottles out. I'm looking through the pint. So I didn't know the dealings with him. And then I went up and met the players and I got to the stadium at Liverpool and I was putting the gear out with the kit man. Brian Clough said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just putting the gear out. He went, no, you're wearing that tonight.
Did you start?
I started at Liverpool on the Tuesday night.
Wow.
So subs reserves on the Monday. I went out, had a few pints. I didn't go crazy, 6, 7 pints. The Tuesday, I got and played at Liverpool. And Liverpool, obviously Barnes and Ronnie Whelan and all these boys. And the players came over and were introducing themselves to me. Because I wasn't even in the dressing room with them. Hadn't even gone, had a training session with them.
What position
I played on the right side of midfield.
But what he did say to me, the milk up.
He said, the first thing really he said to me regarding football, and I made a career out of it. He just said, "You're putting that on." He says, "I've seen you pre-season." I was like, but I wasn't that intimidated by Brian Clough because I was young and innocent.
Yes.
He said, "I've seen you pre-season." He said, "You can control the ball." And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "You can pass it." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You can run." I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Just do them 3 things for me." And I went, "Yeah." And I go every time, even when I left Forest and I went to United, or I might have been having difficult spells, I remember they were the basics for me. Control the ball. I know people laugh when I say control the ball, pass it and run. That was my career. And that's what he said to me before my debut. "Can you do that for me?" And I'm, absolutely.
But you was a box to box, and you scored a lot of goals, didn't you?
Yeah, at Forest, my role was, again, and Forest, again, had the perfect players, whether it be Nigel, Teddy, Lee Glover, Tommy. They had strikers who were very good on the half turn. And Stuart, again, go back to Forest. Brian Clough loved centre forwards who got hold of it.
Yes.
Loved it. I know the games are slightly different. And I used to get, and all I did in Forest, I just ran. I just like a headless chicken. So they'd be playing the strikers. Nigel, if you look at any of my goals at Forest, I'm just running. I'm gone. I'm not even involved in the build-up play, which I had to change obviously when I went to United. Different tests, I suppose. But Piercy wouldn't honestly whip it into Nigel. Nigel getting a half turn, and I'm gone. Nigel would just be picking me out. Lee Glover was very good. I don't know if you remember Lee Glover.
Yes.
Very good on the half turn. So Forest again was a perfect club for me. But Brian Clough was very tough on me as well. You know, as much as he gave me my debut and gave me great advice, it was a tough school in that dressing room. I found it hard sometimes. You'd be homesick, but he was also he'd be on my back, Brian Clough. He'd be on my back,
Was you going back often then? Was you going back?
Yeah, I was
home
going
often,
probably too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every time I went to see him, remember I was doing really well. I'd go back probably every 4 or 5 weeks. I'd say to him, "Is it all right if I go back?" And he'd go, "Yeah, of course." I was doing well for him. He'd go, "Yeah, off you go." I'd go back for a few days, and obviously you'd family coming over. So it was all the Forest stuff was amazing. And again, I'd no responsibilities. I was living with a couple of lads. I'd great freedom. Jesus, Nottingham was a nice place for a night out. I was playing the first team. I was getting a few bob. Happy days.
Who was you speaking to when it started to get to that place where you're like, I need to go home? Was there anyone you could speak to make you feel like?
No, not really. No, you just not when I was. No, you kind of just get on with it.
Yeah.
But again, I looked at senior players at Forest. I know we'd be laughing a joke about it, but there were senior players I'd looked and I go, yeah, and I'd be picking up stuff and making mistakes. You know, I had to make mistakes. I had to do daft things at Nottingham, but I was 19, 20 years of age. I was going to make those mistakes. But I was learning my trade also. Before I knew it at Forest, and then I got obviously in the Irish squad. Before I knew it, I was after playing 100, 110, 120. So I was getting a foundation to my career. And then I was on that roller coaster as well of FA Cup final the first year, we got beaten. Yeah. Second season, we're doing well. United beat us 1-0 in the League Cup final. And my third season, we got relegated. And that's where I'd just signed a new deal a few months earlier. And I was kind of learning then the business side of football. Because I really, at Forest, I was kind of on I hadn't really signed a deal.
Who did that contract for you?
I done it myself. I done the
one before you left to
go
to...
Yeah, I done that. And I just had that clause in where it was like, obviously it looked like we were going to get relegated. And Brian Clough, a lot of pressure on me at the time. Again, I was a young player. Brian Clough was using the media a lot, saying I'm being greedy and all this. But I just said, I've been on the same money for the last basically 2.5 years. I've been playing for Ireland. I've been week in, week out. And I was on about £700-800 a week for all that. So I've never in my life went in for a new contract ever. So when they said, we'd like you to sign, I said, well, and I remember I stuck to my guns. They were saying, I said, I always thought Piercy was on about 250. I want 250,000. I stuck to that. And Brian Clough said, we're not going to give you that. But when it came to that contract situation, I remember going, I'm not budging. And Ron Fenton was doing negotiation. Wow. And Ron Fenton was going, well, listen, you have to sign a deal. We've looked after you. We've brought you over from Ireland. I said, no problem. I said, that's fine, yeah. And I get it. But I've done okay for the club, and I want 250,000.
Did you get it in the end?
I got it in the end.
And you put the relegation clause in as well?
I had a clause in, yeah, that if we got relegated, obviously I could leave for 3.5. Mistake I made is I said I want to go at 3.5 million, but it was after the 1st of September, which was after the European deadline. So that's why I had to be 3 points. That's why United had to give the extra bit to get the deal done. Blackburn offered 4. That's why I nearly signed for Blackburn.
Wow.
Blackburn offered 4 to get
Who was the manager then?
Kenny Dalglish. Well, I met Kenny. It's amazing in life. You're talking about. So Forest agreed to sell me. Brian Clough left in the time, and Frank Clark, and it was all fun and games going on then when the clubs were in for me.
Yeah.
Met Blackburn. Met Kenny Dalglish. Huge respect. Blackburn were making noises. Signed my deal at Forest. We obviously got relegated. during the summer, met Kenny and they agreed a $4 million deal with Forest. Forest were delighted because obviously Blackburn were giving the 500,000 extra. They're not waiting until the 1st of September. It's just they wanted me there for pre-season, of course. Met Kenny Dalglish. I think I was on 250 at Forest. I said to Kenny eventually, said, we can give you 400. I think I asked for 500. Again, I heard Shearer was on that. And I said, I'm not going to want what he's getting, but anyway. So they agreed. Eventually, I says 400. I was on 250 at Forest. I went 400, not bad, like nice little pay rise. And I said, I was sitting in the office like this, and I went, okay, I'll do the deal. I said, brilliant, shook hands. And they said, it was a Friday evening. And they said, all the people in the office are gone, we can't draw the contract up.
Wow. That's it. They're to blame.
So I get a flight. I think I don't know if I flew back the next morning, Saturday morning. I said, well, come back next week, we'll sort it out. And this is not good on me because I shook hands with Kenny Dalglish, somebody I've huge respect for. I flew back to Cork, went out Saturday night, had a good night, saying I'm going to Blackburn, I'm getting a nice little pay rise. Sunday morning, I'm in bed, not in great form. Phone goes, my mother comes up, she went, for Alex Ferguson on the phone for you. So I come down, I said, he said, I've been trying to speak to you about Forest, whatever. I said, well, I've agreed to go to Blackburn. Even have you signed anything? I said, no. And he said, would you meet me tomorrow? I flew to Manchester on the Monday to meet him. Kiddo picked me up at the airport, went to Ferguson's house. Yeah, not a regret.
But just, I'm surprised that you didn't see that deal through the way you are with Kenny and say, look, you know what I mean? Because as you, the way in which
you're right.
You are.
But I also had to step back and go, at least speak to Man United.
Yeah.
At least speak to Man United and take it
Still
from
with
there.
no agent, right?
Still with no agent.
Can't believe
Wow.
And also I'm jeopardising the Blackburn deal
Yes.
because what happened, of course, this dragged on for a couple of months. I had to go back pre-season with Forest because United didn't want to match Blackburn because
Was that the first time United had come in?
Yeah, but I've been told they were trying to get in touch with Forest. They were like not getting back to him with messages. And obviously Brian.
Is that because of
this
the money
was
that they
previously
offered?
before Frank Clark came
That's
in?
because they offered that much.
Yeah, but United's point would have been going, well, your clause is 3.5, but Forest, to be sure, was saying, yeah, it's after the 1st of September. If you want to do the deal a bit earlier, if you do it after 1st of September, especially for United, I wouldn't be able to play in Europe. I think that was the cut-off point. You have to sign.
Jesus.
So that's why you ended up being in.
You have to pick Man United, don't you, ahead of Blackburn?
Do you know what? Yes, Jimmy. But I shook his hand. And
Was it
I
Kenny?
don't feel,
Was it Kenny that was the sway for you, or
it was a
like
bit, I thought, Blackburn were making noises, and I thought Blackburn, I could see it. Listen, I wasn't, and obviously they'd agreed.
Yeah.
It's not as if I was. It'd be different. No, you'd be a bit smarter. You go, I'll just wait. I'll see who else is out there. But I was I was a bit innocent, and I thought. But then I went back to Forest, and I was learning. Then Forest then were saying Forest owed me about 600,000 or 700,000. But Forest was saying, yeah, you agreed these deals, but we're not giving you the few bob. And I went, well, I'm not leaving unless you give my few bob. That's what I'm entitled to. And then we had a game with Ireland. So this was all I'm guessing towards right at the end of the season, the internationals toward the end of the season. And I'd know this is where I eventually got someone to help me with the contract. So Blackburn said they gave me 400, and United at the time were at 300. So I'm at 250 at Forest. United was saying we can get a deal done with Forest, bear with us. And I was like, okay, I'm jeopardising a deal with Blackburn here. And when I was away with Ireland, we did an international game at the end of the season.
were they going to give you the same money or more?
No,
Man United?
United, nowhere near it. Well, United were offering me 300,000.
Wow.
And I was saying, but Blackburn, they were saying, well, take the 400 at Blackburn. I went,
So is this dragging on through a whole season?
This is towards like the when I say the end
Kenny
of the
or
season.
Blackburn are trying to think in this.
Like the end of the
Monday.
season, like a couple of weeks after. But sometimes there's an international match, 3 or 4. Because I remember being away at the international team and speaking to some of the players. They were like, because I remember they saying, where are you off to? And I went, and I was kind of explaining, going, well, Blackburn have offered me 400, but United are at 300. And Dave O'Leary was in the group, and Dave went, who's doing your deal? I went, I'm doing it myself. And he said, would you use I've got Michael Kennedy, who is a solicitor in London. He's done all my contracts. I said, I'll speak to him. So I rang him literally that night from there. I said, Michael, this is the situation. All right, I've been reading about it. I went, if you could speak to Martin Edwards about it. I think it was Martin who obviously doing the deals. And he got back to me the next day. He went, United will go to 350. I went, I'll go to United. But then obviously I had the thing with Blackburn. And what I should have done then was rang Blackburn straight away. But I kind of dragged that out.
Michael, will you phone Blackburn?
I know.
And I didn't get back. And you know what? About a week or two later, I was going on holidays. And I remember it, and again, Kenny rang me. And I remember I was going to tie an app with a few lads from Forest.
Did you send a postcard?
And Kenny gets to me and went, is it, I heard you're off to, and I said, Kenny, yeah. I said, listen. To be fair, I felt about that big. I said, I should have got in touch with you.
Was you scared to phone him, Roy?
A bit embarrassed, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I don't think the United team was quite over the line yet. So this was the game I was playing. I'm trying to keep United on side or whatever. And Kenny went mad. Absolutely. He
What, on the phone to you?
Yeah. He says, and I remember we were.
What did he call you?
he just something like, you're a fucking joke. No one does this to Kenny Dalglish. But he was right. And he was saying, we've shook hands on the deal. And I remember he said something like, in Scotland, if you shake hands, it's a deal. And I was like...
But you would think that as well, wouldn't you? You would.
Yeah, but if I was a manager, not until the deal is signed, I suppose. But yeah, I did.
You agreed to come though, and you shook hands.
Yeah, but listen, I've done that with players. I've been a manager. They said yeah, and then the following day they're going to somebody else. Listen, we all know. But if things were done that night, I would have signed for Blackburn.
Yeah.
So listen, they have to take responsibility. Like that wouldn't happen to a club. No, everyone would stay behind. It's not as if people leave at 5 o'clock. So they have to look at
Early
themselves.
darts on a Friday.
Yeah, you know.
Lost out on Roy Keane.
I'm sure Kenny was going mad, and he was going. And I said, look, I remember saying, Kenny, I'm going on my holidays tomorrow. I said, listen, I'm going to enjoy myself. You know, that's, you know, I'll sign for him when I get back. So I said, I'm done. He said, I'll fucking find you. Huh? I was in Iron Apple for a week looking over my shoulder. I swear.
It's like Taken.
Oh, I swear.
I will find you.
I swear. But then, listen, and obviously I've seen Kenny since, and listen, a brilliant guy. Again, huge respect. I can't say that enough about him. And then I can't. But I still had to go back pre-season with Forest, and Forest was saying, still not giving me the few bob that I was owed. But eventually they went, listen, here's your few bob, and obviously I'd done the United deal, obviously eventually. But it dragged on for a good number of weeks. I had to go back to Forest pre-season, and I was training with the youth team. For Frank Clark, I went back, and Frank Clark was going mad. Frank was the new manager after Brian Clough left. He said, everything we've done for you. And I was like, Frank, you've been here 2 minutes, man. I said, listen, I don't want to play in the championship, and the World Cup was coming up. I said, listen, and again, it was just...
So did they... that was over the few bob.
The few bob.
Yeah. They wanted their few bob, but didn't they?
They got their 3.75 off United, but basically I was entitled to what was left of my contract. Yeah. So everyone was saying to me, don't sign the new deal, but I knew if I signed a deal at Forest and we got relegated and someone came in for me, I'd kind of win. I'd get me a few bob at United. And obviously Forest would give me like a few bob to go, which I felt I was entitled to. Yeah. But I think Forest, certainly Brian Clough always held that against me, that I left with, what, 600,000 or 700,000, whatever I got, having only been there kind of 2 or 3 years as a young player. He definitely felt I probably didn't deserve that.
Got sold for 3.75. They can't.
Of course.
Yeah.
Listen, they made a nice little profit. They bought me for 40,000, 50,000.
Where did the boss take you when he first met you?
I went to his house.
And he didn't take you to Old Trafford or anything, just to his house?
Just to his house, and obviously he made the point. And my family are big United fans. I was a Spurs fan, but my dad and my brother. So once I went over to meet him, you're thinking, it's hard then to turn down United, whatever with the few bob involved. But when I met him, I was like, and obviously Kiddo was there and chatting about where United are going. He said, I think we'll win the league. Chatting about we can win the league again. He said, you would help us, but I think you'd help us in Europe. All the usual chit-chat you'd have with a manager. So I was like, yeah, sounds okay. But I was trying to be business-like as well with it. I was trying to think what's best for me. And the beauty is when I went to United, for all my little, not hang-ups, but about the deals involved and not being a United fan. Again, I was Spurs. Yeah. So when I went to United, they just won the league. But as soon as I walked into United, I loved it.